Hello students, this is assistance on the text The Roman Struggle Between Plebeians and Patricians, also known as the Conflict of the Orders. This document was provided for you in class today either on paper or digitally. I am not going to number the paragraphs because they are essentially numbered for us. They are boxes 1 through 7. Each box contains a paragraph, so I'll just be reading it by using the laser pointer so that you can follow along. I will point out that boxes 1 and 2 are review information because they are things you should have learned in the perspectives assignment that had the fake primary source documents by Tarquinius Superbus and Lucius Junius Brutus. So without further ado, here we go. Box 1, we are at the Etruscan kings. Etruscan kings ruled Rome from around 616 to 509 BCE. The Etruscan tribe ruled northern Italy and slowly conquered territory further to the south until it eventually ruled over Rome. This is something that we pointed out in a map that we looked at in class when we looked at the Latins and the Etruscans and how the Etruscans extended their territory and included Rome. During this time, Roman society became divided into classes, plebeians and patricians. Your status as a plebeian or patrician was decided at birth. The lower class plebeians made up almost 95% of the population and were mostly peasants, laborers, artisans, and shopkeepers. In fact, the word plebeian stems from the Latin word plebs, which means many. Plebeians had far fewer privileges than patricians. Plebeians had very little say in government, were required to pay taxes, and were required to serve in the military. Patricians, on the other hand, were the elite members of ancient Rome. And elite just means very high class, powerful, fancy. They controlled valuable land, held key religious and military offices, and even chose leaders who advised the king. Due to their important role in Roman society, patricians were often seen as the caretakers of Rome. In fact, patricians stems from the Latin word patres, which means father. So you should figure out that Latin is what the Romans are speaking. Here's paragraph and box 2. Even though members of the upper class, the patricians still had to live under a king who lived however he pleased, often upsetting both patricians and plebeians. As time passed, patricians became annoyed with Etruscan rule and demanded to have more control in their government. In fact, in 509 BCE, they led a rebellion that overthrew the last Etruscan king, Tarquinius Superbus. Then, patricians established a new form of government, which they called a republic. And again, this is all review for you if you did that assignment. This type of government is made up of representatives that were chosen by the people. In this republic, patricians divided the state's power to prevent any single person from abusing it. Instead of having a king, the patricians created a body of 300 men called the Senate who would run the country. Senators served for life, meaning they were in the office until they died, were expected to make laws, appoint officials, and serve as judges. The Senate also chose 2 leaders known as consuls who commanded the army and ran the day-to-day affairs of Rome. Paragraph and box 3. Prior to the creation of the Republic, neither patricians nor plebeians had a say in government. Democracy did improve once the last Etruscan king was ousted or deposed. However, only for the patricians, since they were the only ones who could rule. Plebeians had virtually no rights in the new government. For example, laws were not written down, so patricians often changed the laws to suit their own interest. While making up only 5% of the population, patricians controlled nearly all power in Rome. Being starved for political freedoms and sick and tired of being treated as inferior, the plebeians finally started to fight back. A struggle between both sides began, which is known as the conflict of the orders. Here, plebeians demanded more political rights for themselves. And then this little box right here, it's really hard to see it, but it is a picture, an image of the Senate. So all these guys are sitting there in their stone seats. And it says, early Roman government was dominated by the patricians, who held almost complete control over government decisions. All right, let's go to box 4, which is also paragraph 4. Roman society drastically changed once plebeians took a stand and demanded the right to play a role in their government. However, it was not just the right, the right to vote the plebeians desired. That's a typo right there, sorry. The plebeians wanted the respect of being recognized as citizens. Already being forced to pay most of Rome's taxes and constituting the majority of Rome's military, plebeians knew they had an upper hand when they started to demand more political freedom. In 494 BCE, the plebeians began their protest. How did they do it? They simply decided to leave Rome. Recognizing that there was no military without the plebeians, patricians began to panic. There was chaos and pandemonium in the streets. Soon, patricians realized they and their city would start to suffer unless they satisfied the desires of the plebeians. After all, who would protect Rome without the plebeians? Box and paragraph 5. When the plebeians fled Rome, the patricians became alarmed, and fled just means they ran away from Rome. They quickly realized that Rome's safety and security depended on the plebeians' return, so they decided to make a compromise. They allowed the plebeians to elect 10 officials, called the tribune of the plebs, to represent plebeian interest in the Senate. These officials protected the rights of all plebeians. The most important power the tribune was given was that of veto. Any law that plebeians felt was unjust, they could veto or reject. However, plebeian demands did not stop there. They also demanded that one of the 2 consuls be a plebeian. Now, for the first time in history, plebeians were allowed to play an influential part in their own government. Paragraph 6 and box 6. Starting from their revolt and the conflict of the orders, plebeians sought to create a fairer government for all Romans instead of one that only favored the patricians. Along with receiving a consul position, the tribune of the plebs, and the power of veto, plebeians sought to make additional changes throughout Roman society. Leading plebeians were irate, that means they were really mad, that laws were not written down and that patricians could change them whenever they wished. Plebeians demanded that this practice end and for the laws to be recorded. Soon, the laws were carved into 12 wooden tablets and were displayed in public. These laws became known as the 12 Tables. The 12 Tables formed the basis of law for the Roman Republic and combined strict rules with harsh punishment. So tables in this case doesn't mean the place where you eat dinner. It really means the tablets or the big pieces of bronze that the laws were written upon. We're on the last box, next to last box, box 7. Slowly, the Roman Republic became a more democratic form of government. What started out as a system that benefited only patricians eventually came to represent a far broader picture of Roman society. The interest of both patricians and plebeians came to be represented fairly throughout government. The creation of the Citizens' Assembly joined both classes together. It was made up of all adult Roman male citizens, both plebeian and patrician. The assembly nominated the consuls, senators, and members of the tribunes of the plebs. The senators and tribunes advised the consuls in military decisions and presented laws to the assembly. The assembly could approve or veto new laws. This all-important power was a right once restricted to just patricians, but now all Roman citizens played a role. And I want to point out that right here, this is a graphic image, infographic, you could say, of, it says right here, the Roman government, and I think it's 264 BCE, but I can't quite see that, and you won't be able to either. And it just is showing you, like, here are the citizens' assemblies, which are adult male citizens, and how many, that's like a lot, right? A lot of people in the assembly. There were 300 senators. This is a number that you might want to know about. There were 10 tribunes of the plebs, and there were 2 consuls. And then, this is completely useless to you because it's black and white, but it's showing you that there are different colors representing who's a patrician and who's a plebeian, and depending on which choice you choose to learn about conflict of the orders, I'm going to ask you to do some coloring of your own. I hope this helps you on your education journey.